All right, we're at the top of the hour, ready to start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual webinar. I'm Jason Landrum, a Senior Program Officer with the Lenfest Ocean Program, and today I'm joined by some of my colleagues, Emily Knight, Kayla Ripple, and Vicki Bell. For those of you that aren't yet familiar with our program, the Lenfest Ocean Program is a grant-making program that funds ocean and coastal research projects that address the needs of stakeholders, rights holders, and decision makers. You can learn more about us and the projects we fund at www.lenfestocean.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter. Before we get started today, I'd first like to offer a land acknowledgement. From the coast to the deep water and across boundaries and borders, we would like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Indigenous peoples that have called these lands and waters home since time immemorial. Washington, D.C. sits on the ancestral lands of the Nakostans, also documented as Nacotchtank, and the neighboring Piscataway and Pamunkey peoples. For today's webinar, we are honored to have Carly Tyance-Hassel, Ralph Wolf, and Noah Meyer to share the goals and ongoing progress of their project titled Tlingit and Haida Knowledge and Governance, Stewardship, and Advancement of Alaska Fisheries. My colleague Emily Knight will drop a link to their project in the chat, so please take a look at that resource if you haven't already done so. The project team will soon delve into the details of their project, but from the Lenfest side, this project is part of a larger body of work that we are supporting including Indigenous Knowledge and Ocean and Coastal Evidence-Based Decision-Making portfolio. As we all know, the traditional knowledge of Indigenous peoples has historically been overlooked, underappreciated, and underrepresented in decision-making processes, thereby impeding effective conservation and restoration of marine ecosystems. Last year, we announced 8 grant awards through an open RFP process that are now all in their final stages. These projects represent a concerted effort to cultivate collaborative approaches that elevate and include the rich traditions, culture, and wisdom of Indigenous peoples in evidence-based decision-making in the United States and Canada. We are now dropping a link in the chat in case you'd like to read more about this portfolio topic and its funded projects. For today's webinar, a few housekeeping rules to go over. First, please, for all attendees, please stay muted. You are muted and please stay muted. With so many attendees, we want to minimize any audio disruptions during the event. We are also host a live question and answer session at the end of the webinar. But if questions do arise during the webinar, please submit them in the designated Q&A chat area. Please also share resources or comments in the general chat area, and we will track those throughout the webinar as well. With that, I'll pass it over to Carly, Ralph, and Noah and their team to dive into the webinar. Carly, take it away.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Just wanted to acknowledge the generations who have come before us and those who will come after us. And a lot of our work is really rooted in our ancestral responsibility to really protect and conserve fisheries and ocean systems that have really supported our communities for millennia. And we really created this project with communities in mind and really hope that the resources and the tools will support long-term tribal sovereignty and community well-being for, long-term protection and restoration of fisheries in Southeast Alaska. So my name is Carly Tyance-Hassel. I'm a Senior Policy Coordinator in the Indigenous Stewardship Program Division with Tlingit and Haida. And I work really closely with some awesome teams of people who support the Seacoast Indigenous Guardians Network, the Alaska Youth Stewards team, and the Traditional Food Security Program here at Tlingit and Haida. I have a background in environmental science and fisheries research, and now work kind of in like the science policy interface with a focus on fisheries and other marine and land-based policy making. But I'll pause there and hand it off to Noah to introduce himself.
Hey y'all, my name is Noah Meyer. I'm an Alaska Sea Grant State Fellow working with Tlingit and Haida for this year on mariculture policy specifically and wherever Carly and Ralph let me help them out. My background is actually in environmental policy making at a global scale. Go to Ralph.
Good morning. I'm Ralph Wolf, the director of the Indigenous Stewardship Programs here at Tlingit Haida. I was born and raised here in Southeast. I get the privilege to do a lot of different work, but it's all really related to our land, people, and relatives that do call Southeast Alaska home. So I get the privilege to introduce you to our tribe and talk a little bit more about our program here that we call the Indigenous Stewardship Program. So Central Council, Tlingit Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska, or Tlingit Haida, is a sovereign regional government serving more than 38,000 tribal citizens. Tlingit Haida is, in fact, a full-service government. We have over 500 staff, more than 30 departments and programming and administering operational budget over $100 million. Our programs include public safety, economic development, education, workforce development, child welfare, transportation, tribal courts, housing assistance, cultural preservation, emergency management, which you've seen in instances such as our landslides that have happened here or the flooding that happened in Juneau in the last year. You've seen those. Our environmental stewardship and community wellness as well. We exercise through self-determination to build and maintain government operations to deliver central services effectively, efficiently, and accountably to our citizens who often, a good number of them, live outside of Southeast Alaska. So while we do have a region that is really cornered by Southeast Alaska, there's a lot of our tribal citizens live up north in Anchorage and outside of the region there, as well as down in the lower 48 with a big capacity of citizens in the Seattle area. So our experience demonstrates that tribal governments are not passive beneficiaries or programs. We are a self-governing body that's demonstrated expertise in managing complex governmental responsibilities, such as implementing 477 programs and doing a lot of policy work and navigating through many different fun things like the North Pacific Management Council, the State Fish and Game Board meetings. All those things have been very much so something that we have learned and become experts at, and are learning to build more expertise as well as foundational work to build up programming around that. I think to talk about our programs, including the Indigenous stewardship programs that we have here, I think to start off with, we've always been stewards of the lands and waters. I think since time immemorial, our governance, our knowledge systems, our cultural practices have not only been rooted in these the ecosystem, but have been maintained in such a way that we've created a bond with the land and the resources that is generationally indebted into our every ounce of our being. And I think the way that we represent that is through the work that we are able to do in this amazing department that I absolutely love to work with all these very smart, much smarter than myself, folks like Carly and Noah. Also, I forgot to give a shout out to Noah's mom who's watching right now. So welcome. It's a pleasure working with your son. Sorry. But I think over the last century, there was policies that were created specifically to remove us from these places and to remove that connectivity. We found ourselves separated from our food systems, from our water, from our stewardship roles. And this is not a thing of the far past. This is very recent. It's ongoing. It's left an impact on our people, and a lot of the work in the Indigenous stewardship programs is to turn that around. I think there's a connection that like I was talking about earlier that's so much deeper than just saying that we live here. I am from Southeast Alaska. I'm not going anywhere else. I can go to places here where I know that my grandparents were hundreds of years ago and their great-grandparents were, and I can see places that I know they're doing the exact same thing that I am. So it's never been broken. It still lives in us. However, there's a lot of work that we have to do. And I think in the Indigenous stewardship programs, we're able to do that. Part of that is thinking generationally. We're trying to reconnect our youth, our communities, as their roles of the stewards of the land and the sea and the creatures and resources. I think through the program that we have at the Indigenous stewardship programs, we're creating infrastructure to support on-the-ground initiatives, to support our tribal partners throughout the region, and to look into not just a series of projects, but a long-term commitment to building regional resilience through Indigenous leadership, rooted in ancestral knowledge and grounded in the cards that we've been dealt today, whether it's environmental or political. One of those programs is the Seacoast Indigenous Guardians Network, or SIGN. And it's one of our core initiatives. It's got a lot of momentum behind it. SIGN's a regional tribal network that connects 10 tribal communities. I've been at the directorship of the SIGN for 2 years now. We started out and signed 10 villages and tribes on board to start our endeavor. We've secured funding for 5 for this year, and we're really focusing on the 5 who've really accelerated and are really ready to keep pushing. A lot of the work with SIGN is definitely developing relationships with the communities. We're not trying to say what you can or can't monitor. We're trying to help you figure out how we can make you monitor, how we can help you monitor what you feel is important. That could be water monitoring, that could be restoring habitat and figuring out where that is, tracking and harvest levels of fish and marine mammals, conducting surveys, engaging youth in cultural and ecological education, and also culture camps, right? Like we do a lot of different work through this. Our big goal that we've worked with SIGN is we've co-developed a custom data collection app with the Indigenous Sentinels Network. I think I've seen Hannah Marie online. To help the Guardians record the work of the traditional knowledge and the ways they serve our priorities, and then protect data sovereignty through a strong legal framework through that data collection, but also it enables us to collect data in a way that I think we haven't seen regionally done before. And part of that is definitely making sure that we have some kind of unified data and a unified regional project to help get the data out into a way that helps us be ready for the Board of Fish or federal management allocations or anything along those lines, right? So we want to gather the data, but also get it out quickly in a way that makes us more prepared when we have to testify, or more prepared when we bring forward management plans or anything like that. So we definitely appreciate that and look forward to working with the Indigenous Sentinels Network and rolling out that data app, because I think it's such a very important tool that we're we're developing and we're looking through. Another portion that we have is the Traditional Food Security Program, or TFS. I think this program was built in during COVID, when there was direct impacts from the distribution network. There was no meat or food or anything in some of the villages that we had, and we understood that we have to restore food sovereignty by connecting people to traditional harvesting and preparation practices. This year, part of our big job this last year was distributing almost 200,000 pounds of salmon, black cod, and herring eggs on kelp, as well as doing how-to guides on how to prepare those, store them, and put them up. I think it helps us, show youth, and not only youth, but older folks, how to be more self-sufficient, connected, and grounded in their roles as caretakers of the land and sea. And there's no better way to connect folks rather than show them that direct link of what they can do every day, as well as teaching them some ways of doing that, as well as care, right? Like, we have to connect them so that they want to do this work in the future. We have to show them it's about their identity. It's about the intergenerational resilience. My parents were doing the same work that I am right now, and I hope my kids don't have to, but I want them to be prepared if they do. We also know that it's a long-term game. We have to engage in policy. A lot of our work becomes through policy. We see that need, and we see a need to develop a tribal fisheries program focused on recovery, co-management, and indigenous-led science and governance. We've got a couple grants that we're working with that look at strategic planning. We're also starting up a stewardship commission. We hired a person to run that program a couple weeks ago. Very excited to bring them on board so that we can really start standing this idea of regional policy work through tribes. I think the definition of a tribe makes us very strong, and I think we all definitely want to come together and have a unified voice. We've seen that collectively with a couple lawsuits around king salmon that have come up in the past, and I think there's a lot of data in place, as well as work that we can do as tribes to make it go forward and be very organized. I think what it all comes down to, though, is through ISP, we work with connection, right? We're trying to connect people to the place. We're trying to reconnect people to the land, the water, the animals, the resources that are still here. Through the work with SIGN, TFS, and our fisheries work, we're rebuilding that way that has always existed. It's just in a different form. We're restoring relationships, governance. But I think the biggest thing is we're bringing this work, we're bringing it along, and it's led by those who live in the place, and they not only call it home, but have a relationship with the area that's thousands of years old, like I said before. So I think that's all I have to say on our ISP programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. And thanks for introducing and providing some framing for our program in the next slide. Just to provide a little bit of background for the drivers of this project. So like Ralph had mentioned, Tlingit Haida really maintain relationships with tribes throughout the state, Southeast specifically. And we will always try to show up to defend tribal sovereignty and protect, our ways of life, and really try to serve to elevate fisheries concerns and bring attention to underlying management issues. But due to, ongoing impacts of capitalism and colonialism, including certain state and federal legislation, and, just the regulatory system itself, our relatives have really faced unjust and inequitable fishing modification, closures, restrictions, really causing impact to community well-being. And, the legal requirements for subsistence priority in Alaska have really been repeatedly ignored by management regimes. And so in previous testimony and comment letters, a lot of tribes have really expressed this deep concern over these regimes. And, Ralph had mentioned the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, the Alaska Board of Fisheries, and the Federal Subsistence Board. But this also includes, acknowledging that academic or research institutions, they have, sometimes excluded Indigenous peoples and knowledge, yet are used to inform decision-making through science and data collection efforts. And so really this dual fisheries management system in the state of Alaska already presents challenges and barriers for effective tribal engagement and participation. And often these meetings can happen at the same time. And so, many tribes have really limited capacity to access meeting information in a timely manner. Sometimes this information is released with little notice or time to review. And so, oftentimes with these meetings, there's hundreds of pages of technical reports that inform how certain regulatory changes will be decided. And it's really important to note that these issues have direct impacts to our way of life. And a lot of the time what happens is our tribal staff and leaders have to choose where and if it's possible to allocate their resources, their travel funding, their expertise to provide written or in-person testimony. But Indigenous people have really been managing and harvesting fisheries for millennia and have really developed a deep, nuanced understanding of these aquatic ecosystems, of species behavior, of systems changes. And this knowledge is often really holistic and encompasses not just the biology of the fish, but the cultural and spiritual and ecological relationship. And so these insights are really valuable to really understand the long-term trends and patterns that maybe Western science and management might overlook or not capture fully, typically in more shorter term or more narrowly focused studies. And so through this project, we really tried to develop a set of resources and tools to address these barriers of participation and engagement. However, still acknowledge that there are systemic barriers that are deeply woven into the state regulatory system or federal system. And this kind of further perpetuates the lack of inclusion, engagement, and tribal leadership and decision-making. So that was a kind of a bit of a background as to why we decided to apply for funding through LenFest. But on a more lighter note, art and storytelling and narrative all really play important parts of sharing our culture and our language and touching the hearts to ensure that we can really conserve and protect the land, air, and waters for future generations. And we really tried to increase the quality of our content creation for more impactful engagement, really highlighting and harnessing the power of artwork and artistic creation to portray powerful stories and narrative, and really highlight the impact of art and messaging. And so we worked with Savannah Lacornu, who designed artwork for our content creation, like our fisheries toolkit, different outreach and education materials. And we're also excited to work with her for future work. We're developing a Guardian's guidebook as well. So you'll kind of see some of her artwork sprinkled throughout the presentation today. And again, we're like super excited to have this collaborative partnership with Savannah, and we've discussed future ideas and projects like co-designing and creating community-based mural projects or storytelling series, like through maybe like an art-based comic or youth engagement with coloring books and things like that. So please check out her website and her Instagram. She has been really awesome to work with. And in 2024, we partnered with First Alaskans Institute Summer Internship Program and hosted a 10-week fisheries-focused internship. Just kind of showing you a highlight of what she created on Instagram, and there's no sound associated with this video, so don't worry if audio is not coming through. But yeah, Joellen Johnson, she's Yupik from Kotlik along the Yukon River. She focused on the development of storytelling assets and social media content creation, and made the trip down to Prince of Wales and conducted interviews with the Alaska Youth Stewards crew and other community members and elders. And she shared that working as a fisheries intern with our team really allowed her to kind of deepen knowledge of data inventory and programs and other aspects of fisheries policy and management throughout the state. And she had mentioned that this knowledge was really important to her, specifically because of the significant decline in salmon, which is affecting many Alaska communities, but her community as well on the Yukon River. And many communities on the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers have not been able to fish for a number of years due to these declines and other issues. But yeah, the First Alaskans Institute Summer Internship Program really provided professional development opportunities and leadership development through the summer to the youth who were involved. And you can check out more of the social media posts on our Seacoast Indigenous Guardians Network media pages. You can kind of scan the QR code with your phone and it should bring you to the Instagram page. She also kickstarted the development of our knowledge basket resource or a data portal, which we will share shortly, by gathering information and reports and data related to fisheries. And we are super excited to continue to work with FAI and offer another internship this summer in 2025 to work alongside our team and continue to engage in professional development opportunities, connecting science and policy and advocacy in fisheries. And just a little bit more about the data collection and our partnership with the Indigenous Sentinels Network. So there have been some issues in consistent statewide or federal fisheries monitoring programs, and that really includes consistent funding allocated through federal appropriations. And particularly, many of us have seen what significant budget cuts and federal spending can result in, especially in this current administration. So these cuts can really lead to data gaps in the frequency, the quantity, and the type of fishery monitoring programs that are really designed to inform fishery managers and decision makers. And oftentimes what we see is this data is inaccessible, inaccurate, and maybe even outdated, or it's not real time as it takes time to validate and analyze. And so this is unfortunate because good data informs good policy. And so we advocate that fisheries and the guardians are, the key to addressing these data gaps. Guardians are the local workforce. They're the teachers, the researchers that can really uplift and strengthen or have true impact to fishery stewardship. And so we kind of see this as an opportunity to look within ourselves and our communities and elevate our Guardians program as like the eyes and the ears and the first responders to really quantify and assess change. And so over the past year, we've partnered with ISN to bring about a custom branded sign app. And that includes establishing data collection infrastructure. And we held our first ever Guardians gathering in March and really started to onboard and train Guardians to utilize the app and set up our own programs and forms for collection of data. And we also were really excited to provide and develop our data access policy that outlines our data principles and processes and protections, and those are available on our site website as well. And we had mentioned the creation of a signed knowledge basket. Tribal governing entities really require relevant, reliable current data to make sensible policy decisions. And so again, we partnered with ISN and their developers at the Open Landscape Network to provide this resource. And this knowledge basket is really a dedicated kind of repository that gathers, preserves, and shares knowledge and histories and information and research in various formats. So there are some videos, audio files, PowerPoints, and different reports or links to different websites. And really the goal is to kind of uplift projects and foster collaboration in research and policymaking. And the reason why we called it a knowledge basket, the art and practice of making a basket really embodies storytelling and knowledge transmission as you kind of connect the teacher with the student. And it really, again, tries to foster this deep reverence for land, air, and water in which we source our basket materials. And so we really kind of envision this knowledge basket to support preparation for advocacy and policy work, and not just for fisheries, but other management and stewardship issues in the future as well. And so this is just kind of a few screenshots. When you visit the basket, you kind of kind of ask it a question on a certain topic and refine it through filters, and it will search our library for reports and slides and videos. And Joe Allen, the intern, these are all kind of materials that she curated last summer. And I want to mention that this isn't connected to like an open source platform, but rather it's searching our own collection of materials that's already uploaded and present in the knowledge basket. And so this is kind of designed to create greater protection over the types of information, and are able to kind of review the information we wish to highlight and present in the search. And I just want to mention that we will really try our best to ensure that this knowledge and information that is contributed is respected with integrity, and that it's grounded in Indigenous data sovereignty principles. Please reach out to our team if there's anything on there that maybe you have questions about. But again, the ownership of the documents in the collection really remains with the original authors and creators. And if you want to contribute to the basket, or if you have feedback on the functionality, we'd love to hear from you. And our team is really kind of happy to chat as well. And the reports are publicly sourced and discoverable, but there are various status categories that can protect certain knowledge. And so, there's ongoing information, complete or retired versions of information, but we can also kind of classify a report as not released, or it's not public to the public. And so, yeah, this report may be accessible with permission from the author. So we kind of develop these status categories to ensure that information is protected. But next, I'll hand it over to Noah, who will share a little bit about the story map that we developed.
Yeah, so on that note of knowledge and sharing it, we've developed a story map, which is available online, that details the state of Southeast Alaska's fisheries, as well as what tribes across the region are doing to improve it. The map describes projects in management, monitoring, restoration, and so much more. This includes salmon escapement monitoring projects, which occur throughout the region, many tribes restoring anadromous streams in their traditional territories to ensure migrating salmon have the environment that they need for a successful spawn, working with federal and state agencies to ensure the protection of subsistence harvests and fisheries, and the establishment of the region's first modern clam garden, and so much more. We thought that it was really important through this to kind of share, to identify and promote what tribes are doing across the region, and that is available for you guys to see online. And so focusing on myself for a minute, the focus of my fellowship year has been on mariculture through Alaska Sea Grant. They have provided funding for this fellowship. And so mariculture is farming seaweed and shellfish on the sea. And we make a distinction there between seaweed, shellfish, and finfish farming that you might find elsewhere in the world, because it's actually illegal in the state of Alaska. So my research especially focused on the details of governance and policies that affect the industry's development. With Alaska's abundant and pristine coastline, many see mariculture as an exciting opportunity in the region, but there are a lot of room for improvements to make this industry possible and benefit the people who are in the region. So primarily, I've been constructing a report on the permitting process in Alaska, specifically evaluating the tribal consultation process, how traditional knowledge is included in decision-making, and how tribal sovereignty is respected. To do so, I looked both at what agencies are required to do in the statutes and regulations, as well as met with individuals at each of the agencies to talk about how they work to meet or sometimes exceed those expectations. The findings of the study were essentially that these processes are largely lacking to this point, and that when looking at some cases in neighboring British Columbia or Washington and California in the lower 48, there are myriad ways that Alaska can make small changes that would have big impacts on the industry. Beyond the report, I've had a lot of experiences learning more about the region's fisheries and the mariculture industry. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was able to attend the International Seaweed Symposium, thanks to the LenFest program in Victoria, where I learned more about seaweed than I could have imagined there was to learn, and made lots of meaningful connections with other organizations that work in restoration or farming across the West Coast and globally.
Yeah, we at Tlingit Haida are like super excited to partner with Sea Grant. This was our first time hosting a fellow, and we're excited to host another fellow once Noah's fellowship concludes with us this summer. And so, yeah, just really excited to continue partnerships and collaborations and just support community-based research and priorities in service to a variety of topics. And I just wanted to mention the just acknowledging the shortcomings and inequities in state and federal management processes, just including how, nerve-wracking it is to navigate and show up and speak in these policy and regulatory arenas. I wanted to take a few minutes to really highlight the power of looking within and among our communities and really celebrate Indigenous brilliance and wisdom. And by focusing on the power of Indigenous story and policy creation and fishery stewardship, I really wanted to share some concepts around Indigenous law and how the value of our stories can lead us back to original forms of fisheries governance. And so Indigenous societies have always been lawful, and natural laws are really rooted in the lands and the waters, in sacred sites, how salmon return to their natal streams, or in the tides. And they're really rooted also in our traditional languages, in our place names, in spirituality and ceremony, and in lifeways. And these forms of law are rooted in stories, and community safety, in fairness and accountability. And Indigenous communities have really maintained and repurposed or developed practices of political deliberation within contexts of colonialism, and as state and federal management is imposed. And so as you sit with storytellers or traditional knowledge holders, you really find common foundational principles and lessons that explain the relationships between humans and fish and the ocean. And they tell stories of how and if standards are being met. And really these stories tell us the consequences for not following proper protocols, say for stewarding of salmon. And we're asking, how then can we learn and teach these principles with our communities, or revitalize this knowledge, or share with non-Indigenous peoples if it's appropriate, like fishery managers or with federal agencies. And how is this really done in practice, or how can it be applied to, say, improving testimony during council processes? And I wanted to share an example of a framework called Revitalizing Indigenous Law for Land, Air, and Water, otherwise known as RELAW, and the importance of our traditional forms of storytelling. So told throughout Southeast Alaska, there's the story of Salmon Boy. Has anyone heard of Salmon Boy before? Feel free to type it in the chat if you've heard the story. But the story really illustrates the significant cultural concepts about salmon, including that they feel and make choices, they attend to human action or inaction, and they require respectful treatment, and that they won't return if they're not treated with respect. And the importance of salmon and culture is really kind of demonstrated through social or ceremonial institutions and practices. You see a lot of story in clan crests or place names, in regalia and songs and dances. And this RELAW framework, which is championed by environmental and Indigenous lawyers at West Coast Environmental Law based in Vancouver, this framework is really often guided by two questions. Question one is, what are the forms or terms for this thoughtful rebuilding process with the communities? And two, what are the intellectual processes in each Indigenous society that have historically enabled people to deal with and account for change? So as an example, in this case, you would be focusing on a collection of fishery stories or data, and then you could utilize something like a case brief document, which is actually a legal type of tool, to sit with the community and decide on the facts. Why is the story being told? What is the story teaching us? And really the process and methodology are decided by the community and by elders and culture bearers or traditional language speakers. And this technique and application of dialogue is really the type of communication that has grievance mechanisms kind of built into respecting rights and acknowledging gifts and contributions of all, including both Western and Indigenous knowledge systems. And so it's through this process of community deliberation where you revitalize stories and you really outline how you act together and create policy in a transparent way. And really, these frameworks are designed to guide communities to have more influence and autonomy and self-determination. In this case, with the understanding of fisheries governance, both at home, with your families, within your communities, and then connecting these practices, say, to research or to knowledge co-production. And other resources related to fisheries management, you could bring those or invite those people into this process as well. If you have really great allies that you're working with or collaborators at, say, a university, and this information and your partners can then support real-time decision-making. And this approach is really supposed to honor both narratives from communities and histories and oral stories, but also the numbers and the data. And wanted to mention that data really does not supersede our oral histories or community stories, but really our community and individual narratives add color and context and emotion to the raw numbers. But the numbers can also lend scale and precision and objectivity to our questions. And so provisions and mechanisms are really kind of added into this framework. And we are working on a tribal fisheries policy toolkit that includes this framework. It's coming soon. We're just kind of in the process of finalizing it and having some folks review, but it really highlights relevant information for shaping public testimony, acknowledging some work from other regions as well in Alaska, but with the goal of increasing tribal advocacy and presence in fisheries management, and really shares these tools to be presented as resources to support decision-making. And in Southeast Alaska, Ralph had mentioned we're really mobilizing our Seacoast Indigenous Guardians Network and data capabilities to really account for state and federal fisheries misalignment or mismanagement or data gaps and lack of funding, or accounting for staff capacity issues. In terms of next steps, Ralph had also mentioned that we're building the foundation and scaffolding for a Southeast Tribal Intertribal Stewardship Commission, and really focusing on sharing these resources and tools with tribal citizens. But then kind of taking it a next step further is quantifying if and how these resources will and have supported tribes in testimony or decision-making. And we recently got funded through the NOAA Coastal Resilience Grant that will really kind of take our program to the next level and embark on a strategic planning process to publish a Southeast Tribal Fisheries Strategy. And kind of to summarize, we're really trying to equip tribal citizens with the toolkit, the knowledge basket, providing training through the Sign Data app, and really connecting youth to these learning opportunities and focusing on traditional forms of governance and storytelling, and kind of having all of these as like the best scientific information available, and really historical management decisions and programmatic reviews kind of portray strong evidence that these Western systems kind of continue to fail our people. And so we really must rely on our own measures and mechanisms to support sustained participation of fisheries. And so all of this work together, including the Guardians program, really aims to kind of deepen knowledge and data sovereignty to shift power dynamics and support community self-determination. And by arming people with the tools and the methods to bring their narrative and numbers, we really kind of hope to revitalize and protect stories for Indigenous law to uplift tribal sovereignty. Just want to say Ganoshish Hawata Landfest Ocean Program for funding this work, which has really been imperative in kickstarting our tribal fisheries programming at Tlingit Haida. And thanks to everybody for joining us today as well. Please reach out to us if you see any synergies in your work. We'd really love to connect and support others in this journey as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Carly, Noah, and Ralph. That was such a lovely presentation by all of you. So thank you so much. We are into a Q&A session. So as I mentioned in the chat several minutes ago, please put your questions in the question and answer section, and all the panelists will get to them. And so we've got a bit of time for some questions. So great time for engagement with folks who are out there and on the webinar. Well, why folks are gathering their questions, I'll start with one that I've got, and would love to hear from all the panelists on this one. And we really was just thinking about what's giving you hope lately, whether it be through particular experiences or engagement through this project or other ongoing projects or work. What has given you the most hope for the progress you're making to advance Indigenous agency and knowledge? Let's start with Carly, and then we'll move on to Ralph and Noah.
So I'd mentioned in the presentation that we had our first ever Guardians gathering in March, and that was kind of the first time where the Guardians got to meet in person, and we discussed some of the challenges with getting a program up and running, but also kind of strategized and co-visioned what the Guardians program could look like in the future. But one of the things that was really most impactful for me in that was hearing from an Alaska youth steward. So just hearing about how this program has really impacted her and how she's been able to serve her community, and just hearing from the youth and the impact that this programming has had provided a lot of hope for me, and knowing that the next generation, they're not waiting to be leaders and change makers. They're already there in the field working and showing up in these spaces. And so that was really amazing to hear from her, and just from the rest of the Alaska Youth Stewards crew. And yeah, Joe Allen, our intern that we worked with this past summer, was really great to work with as well. So yeah, the youth are also the future, but they are the current champions and change makers to today as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Carly. Ralph?
Thanks for starting us off with an easy question, Jason.
I do my best.
I think something that really gives me hope, I was hired 2 years ago to run the Guardians Network. We quickly realized that there's a whole lot of other work just interrelated and connected to the Guardians work. Right now we have 12 people on the team. There was there was 5 of us when I came on board. We're now at 12. I think in a month or two we're going to be at 16. And I think just the capacity that we've grown in 2 years is really helpful. It used to be myself and Carly. We added Noah. We're adding a forestry person specialist here in a couple weeks. So I think the hope I see is that we're building the capacity. We're figuring out how to slowly but surely fund the same capacity, right? Because it takes funding to do this, and all this work is not necessarily easy to find funding for, but I think through building capacity, I think that's giving me hope, because it's no longer tribes just trying to wing something together at very last minute. We're being very organized in our approach, and we have notes, and folks are definitely open arms to any kind of information that we can pass along or help set up testimony for them. So I think that's where I see hope.
Wonderful, Ralph. Thanks so much. Noah?
Yeah, Ralph and Carly both will tell you that I struggle to find hope sometimes, but I think the opportunity to go abroad a couple weeks ago and network with people either in British Columbia or New Zealand or wherever, and see the progress there, it's very easy to kind of get into an insular news cycle and just feel like, oh, there's something bad and new every single day. So to get to see progress and kind of excitement and sharing that excitement about progress in those communities in New Zealand, and especially right next door in British Columbia, to see, it's just a matter of time before things get better again and progress can really get ramped up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Noah. We've got a question that came in. What sorts of training and education is in the development for youth and schools, particularly in smaller communities?
I think part of the work that we do is especially with my traditional food security guys, Claude and Tony, is they live in Heidelberg. They get asked to go on things all the time. Sea Week, they went out and took kids from the Heidelberg school to go be out in the tide flats on a minus tide. So, showing that's the best classroom right there, right? That's the kind of education that we do. They get asked to come in and butcher up deer, fish, put up salmon, take the kids out when it's really nice out to go pick berries and all those kinds of things. So we're really developing those things, but I think our approach is teach through like physical, like hands-on learning, right? Like we want the kids to get out there and see those things, or to butcher up a deer or cut up a salmon. Like it's all hands-on. And we're also figuring out how to connect with those kids on a different level, right? Like we got a lot of work to do on our TikToks, but our short videos on how to prepare salmon and cut up deer and what to do after you cut them up, right? Like I think that's where the money's at. We got to figure out how to do it in like 60 seconds or less, or we lose the attention span that those kids have right now. So I'm sure I missed something, Carly.
Yeah, I wanted to bring attention to like our awesome departments at Tlingit Haida too, who are developing curriculum for different, education, cultural programming. And so I think in the future too, our team specifically would like to develop more curriculum or asynchronous learning when it comes to documenting all of these amazing trainings and classes and things that we're putting together, especially through our upcoming NOAA grant. We're supposed to be doing some more education and capacity building. And so kind of maybe developing or adding to our knowledge basket, for example, maybe having like a more youth-centered or focused kind of set of curriculum and information available that folks can access at a later time, or make use in, say, classrooms and things like that. So those are definitely on our minds as we develop our programs.
Fantastic.
Also looking for partners to do that, Jenny, if there's ways we can kind of think about how to kind of elevating that and connecting academic institutions, that would be really great as well.
Yeah, and for those who are out there on the webinar, please connect with the project team directly, or if you don't have emails, just connect with any of us at LenFest, and we'll happily make the connection with Carly, Ralph, and Noah. We have one other question in the Q&A section, and it's from Jane McMillan. Your work offers many teachings for the reinvigoration of ancestral laws and ways of being and learning on the East Coast. Thank you for sharing your inspiring stories and knowledge. So that was more of a comment than a question, but I'm sure Jane would love to learn more about your project. So hopefully you guys can link up with her and others. As we wait for other questions, I had one other question I'd love to hear a little bit from the panelists. Throughout your presentation, and of course throughout our work together, you mentioned the terms co-design, co-production of knowledge as key aspects in terms of how you work with your communities, how others work with you. I would like to, those are terms that are gaining momentum and gaining more visibility in the broader ocean space. So it'd be great if you could take a little bit of time to kind of define those terms or reflect on those terms of what they mean to you and the work that you're doing either with this project or other engagement.
I think I'll take a stab at this. When we work with our communities, we're not coming in and saying, you guys need to monitor this river right here. Our goal is to come in and learn. We know that you're the experts of your area of where you live. And I think the idea behind that co-creation of what kind of data we want to go out and gather, what kind of information we want to tell, what's the story to tell here, how we get there. We're trying to work with the folks in the community first and see how we can set up that co-creation there. The co-creation is, in this aspect, is for setup of the data gathering tool. I think there's a couple different levels of right? Like co-creation. I think on that level, that's where we're at. On the federal level, I think we push a little bit harder. We're saying, hey, we've been here for a long time. We know what's going on. We've seen these trends come and go. I think we need to be at the table, not just in an advisory role, but having a voting position and a role that's actually not a talking puppet. So I think that's the other part of that those two parts of that I talk about all the time. So
Thanks, Ralph.
Yep.
Carly or Noah, any thoughts?
Could you repeat the question, Jason? I was just reading.
Oh, sure. Yeah, a lot of co-creation, co-design, co-production, just in terms, what they mean to you and your work, and how important are they for facilitating, equitable, inclusive work, kind of along the lines of what Ralph was saying. But what do they mean to you, and how are they reflected in the work that you're engaging with in this project and other projects? Just so that you can help others better maybe formalize those terms in the work they do.
To hear from Noah, put you on the spot.
I knew that you were going to say that. So
Sorry, Noah.
Okay, I was ready. I think for me, I kind of lean more into the research side of things, and especially with social science, there's a lot of research that I would like to do. And I think having just come out of school, it's very easy to kind of have the idea of what I want, what my research question is, what I think the answer will be, and what I'd like to find along the way. So to kind of to refocus myself on the interests and needs of others, and specifically these communities, as far as, talking to Ralph and Carly, is this something that people would want? Is this something beneficial? And co-designing in that way to kind of not just bring my interests from the outside and say, this is what I want to research and this is what I think benefits you, but kind of say, here's what I want to research. Does this benefit you? How could I shape it to make it that way?
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Noah. And we've got one more question that's a bit more of on the technical side from an anonymous attendee. Thanks for your presentation. Really interesting and informative. The technical question is, from your data collection app with ISN, can you clarify where your data is stored, external cloud provider or local servers, and what infrastructure or platform your app runs on? Additionally, how do you ensure data sovereignty and security for your environmental data storage? So essentially the two questions are, for your data collection app, where are your data stored? And what infrastructure or platform your app runs on? Let maybe ask those first, and then we can get to the ensuring data sovereignty question.
Those are some very technical questions, and I wish I had the exact answer for you, and I should really know this as well. I really wish Hannah Marie was on the call still. She'd be able to give you a more clear answer. From my understanding, it is not a local server. I think that the infrastructure and platform is entirely our own. So what we ended up doing for SIGN, so the Indigenous Sentinels Network have an app specifically for ISN, and they've got different regions and different communities in Alaska utilizing the ISN network. We decided to kind of have our own specific app that's custom branded to SIGN and kind of separate from the ISN app in terms of like a platform. And so Guardians are able to kind of set up their own communities and organizations. And I kind of mentioned in like a previous answer that Tlingit Haida we don't have access to, you know, the guardian community. We're not admins, we're not managing their data. We can provide, say, support when it comes to, say, like a data access policy. We can provide like a template for them to kind of adapt and change and make their own, as well as training and information to kind of set up their system and ensure security of their information. Yeah, I really wish that I had a better answer when it comes to the more technical side of the server, but I know you're anonymous, but if you wanted to email me, I can definitely find out and ask guys and specifically the more technical infrastructure side of things. I'll drop my email in the chat here.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Carly. And thank you for the anonymous attendee for the question. Hope you reach out to the team. We also have some other folks in the chat that want to talk a little bit more about sustainable seafood movement, excuse me, and seaweed. So Cyan Morgan, please reach out. Carly just dropped her email in the link. Well, we are at time, and I just wanted to take a brief moment to thank the whole project team and all of our panelists today for the wonderful presentations and the rich discussion. Make sure to follow this work through the resources that we shared earlier in the chat, but feel free to reach out to any of the project team here on the panel or us at LenFest Ocean Program with any questions or requests for more information. I want to thank everybody for joining us again today, and we're really excited to see how this work matures and continues to make incredible impact. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.